show your support for the Untold Radio Network family of shows and join in on the conversation by using super stickers and super chats on YouTube. Got a question you want answered? Ask it live via a super chat and get real-time responses from our show's knowledgeable hosts and guests. Help keep the Untold Radio Network shows running strong. We need your support. Send your super chats and stickers now.
Well, hi there, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Jay Katz. I'm joined by my beautiful wife every week, Aspasia. How are you?
I'm very well.
You are on episode 58. Can you believe that, of Down South Anomalies? It is Beauty and the Beast.
It's Sarah Bignell. Beauty and the Beast.
Beauty and the Beast. Bigfoot down under. I nearly slipped there. I was going to say Beauty versus the Beast, but it's Beauty and the Beast and Bigfoot down under.
I don't think we can win this one.
And it is the astounding Sarah Bignell.
That's right.
And just before I introduce this profound lady who was actually our first episode to ever spike, because this lady is beautiful on the inside and out. And she is one of our country's greatest anomalous researchers. And she's just the sweetest person in the goddamn world. But I must tell you, we are broadcasting on stolen land. I can hear the rain pouring now.
It's coming down.
It is coming down.
That's okay.
Of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and we need to acknowledge and pay our respects to elders past, present, and emerging. That is so important. But Sarah, as I was saying before, was episode number 9.
She was.
We never thought we'd get this podcast off the ground till we got Sarah on there because the public just ran to that podcast.
They did.
And we got more hits. It's still up there as one of our major podcasts.
It is.
And there's just something so astounding about this lady. She has done literally decades on research into all things anomalous, but primarily the Yowie, our version of Bigfoot, Sasquatch.
The hairy man.
The hairy man. And she's recently left Australian Yowie Hunters to cut her own rug with her monthly podcast, Yowie Central, and lots of independent investigation.
Yeah. I think sometimes if you take too much on your plate, you don't give enough time to everything to make it, Yeah.
Well, whatever you were saying there, I've got no idea, darling. That's what marriage kicks up. Confusion after all these years.
If you don't give time enough to things, then you're not doing it properly. So you sometimes if you take too much on, you're spreading too thin and you're not getting things done properly. So it's best to do 1 or 2 things instead of 10 things.
All right, God, it takes us a long time to actually get to a point. It does, Sarah. Excuse us here. Sarah Bignell, thank you for being part of this episode of Down South Anomalies.
Oh, Jamie and Aspa, I'm absolutely delighted to be back with you again. I had such a great time speaking with you last time, and you are such lovely, warm, engaging people. I was absolutely delighted to be asked back, so I'm very happy to be here.
Well, I'll tell you what, after
happy
this,
to have you.
Send us your postal address on Messenger, and when we finally make some money, we'll crack part of that check for you. Anyway, gee whiz. I mean, we'll get into Yowie Central a little later, but you have spent many years being an incredible investigator and someone who's done some of the most astounding interviews with people with a patience that is literally forensic. So I guess for listeners and viewers that are unaware of your history, maybe take us back to where all this started and your background, what you've done professionally to actually draw you into this parallel world of viewing our planet.
So I, as a child, was always drawn to the invisible world, to the mythical creatures, we call them mythical creatures. I've since learnt that many of those creatures do actually exist. But I always read books, the Narnia series and The Dark is Rising by Susan Cooper and, vampires and werewolves and trolls and goblins. I was always into that side of things. Then in my 30s, I was a social worker and working with victims of violent crime, pretty heavy duty job. And did that for quite a few years and then had a little break, needed a break. And then a friend of mine asked me to come and co-host her radio show just for the afternoon. And she said, come and talk about something. I don't care what it is, just talk about something. And I was like, well, the only thing that I'm actually really up to speed on and can tell you a lot about is Yowies, is Bigfoot, because it's something that I've been researching for 20 odd years in my own time, just reading and listening, and was always very, very drawn to this subject. So after I did her little radio show, she said, Yowie, you've got to do your own show. This is awesome. So in my own, it's a local Castlemaine volunteer radio station. And I decided to then start this little show and a weekly show. And in the first few weeks, I thought, I've got to try and interview someone from Australian Yowie Research. And I got onto Dean Harrison. And at the time, he was really happy to talk to me. So we became friends then. And he asked me to start doing the witness interviews for all of the people who report their Yowie sightings to Australian Yowie Research. And that's how it sort of started. So all along, all this 4 years or whatever it is, I've been doing my show, but also at the same time, up until maybe 6 months ago, I was doing all the witness interviews for Australian Yowie Research. So that's the background.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, if people go up online and they can watch these visually on YouTube, they've got great CGI bits happening as well to actually bring forward these stories visually. But you as an interviewer, and you know, that is not an easy job whatsoever. And when dealing with the world of the anomalous, it's easy to lead people into things that, you know, when it comes to something that we're not sure is real or not, it's easy to lead them into areas that can become very doubtful. You do it with such candor, such patience, and such warmth, and you don't lead anyone. You let those stories come to their own life, and it is so compelling. I mean, gee whiz. The wife's just leaning over for the cat there.
No, I'm just checking to see that the leak hasn't come.
We have a floor that floods when it rains, so we have to be careful, but I think we're okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, you do it so well that I suggest that people go to yowiehunters.com and listen to a few of your incredible interviews. Mm-hmm. I'm just curious, there are a couple of stories that stand out to you in the time. Of course there are, but, you know, are there any stories that you can recant to us that really stood out to you, that really affected you?
Oh, look, there are quite a few. I think one of the ones, and this was early on in the piece, I interviewed a man who didn't know anything about Yowies beforehand. He was this was near Brisbane, and it was the Bellbird Grove sighting. This guy, it was during COVID, so it's a relatively recent one. It was in 2020. He's a runner, and a walker, big walker, and he would go to this area, Bellbird Grove, south of Brisbane, southwest of Brisbane, and it's connected to the Dugula National Park. And he's going for a walk, and he snuck through. The park was closed really because everyone was supposed to be locked down, and he'd snuck out, and he started hearing going down a really off the beaten track path near a creek bed. He starts hearing these rocks being clacked together, and he was like, what's going on there? That's a bit weird. And so he starts, instead of walking along the path that was along the creek, he went down into the mostly dry creek bed. There were little puddles here and there, but it was mostly dry during summer. And he comes around a bend in the creek, and all of a sudden up ahead of him is what he describes as about 5 foot tall, hairy all over, acting like a little kid, sort of ankle deep water, so clacking rocks and splashing around a bit, moving its body maybe like a little child would in a puddle.
Right.
And he's a scientist. He's a very pragmatic kind of guy, not into the paranormal at all, not into Yowies. And he suddenly sees this being, and when he spots this being, this little being turns to the side to the creek bank, and makes a little kissy kind of, purses its lips and makes a little like a raspberry kind of sound. And all of a sudden, this stomp, this massive, enormous, hairy, bipedal being stomps into view down onto the creek bank to near the smaller one, and opens its mouth and roars at him. And he turned and ran for his life. He's a sprinter, and he said, "I think I made my best personal time ever." He said, "I had 2 phones in my pocket, a work one and my personal one. Didn't even occur to me to take them out.
Yeah, right.
I was running for my life. I thought I was going to die." He was so shaken that he didn't even tell his wife or his children initially. It took him quite a few months to share that with them. And he even went to a doctor and didn't say what had happened, but said he was having serious anxiety and not sleeping, and they gave him some anti-anxiety medication because he was so shaken by that experience. And that was one of the things I noticed as a trained social worker when I first started doing this job, was there is actually a need for psychological first aid, for mental health first aid, for people who have these experiences, particularly when it's someone who isn't in touch with the invisible world, with the paranormal world, like other people might be, someone who is completely disconnected from that world. This was paradigm shifting, life-changing stuff. And also he was fully aware that if he...
What a fascinating story and compelling. I think we've just freezed up a little bit. If you're having a problem there, it might be an idea.
Okay.
Yeah, no, you're okay.
I'm back. Yeah, it's big. We've got a storm. We've got rain and a storm.
Well,
it's raining.
It's supposed to be raining across the whole of Australia.
It's supposed to be El Niño.
That's a big cloud. That's a huge cloud.
This is so compelling, this story. Can we just go back to when you froze up?
Yeah.
Oh, so that's kind of the end of it, I guess. Well, not quite. I guess he has been able to share that experience now with his family, and he's also been back to the site with the AYR team. And there's a couple of videos of that on the Yowie Hunters website if you want to look them up. But I guess for me, that was one of the first ones I did that the man I spoke with was significantly traumatized, and almost I would suggest, and I'm not a mental health expert, but I would suggest showing signs of PTSD. So that was pretty full on. That was one of the ones that I remember. I can't remember the stories I told you last time, but there is another one. There's lots of them, but one of the other ones that I remember very clearly, because I remember thinking, oh my God, if that happened to me, I would, it would be really, really scary. So there's this woman, she's driving alone. It's New Year's Eve, middle of the night. I think it might've been a full moon or something. It was quite bright out. And she ends up not wanting to stay where she was and driving home. This is near the Bongal Bongal National Park in New South Wales, and she's driving down. It's very there's no one on the roads. It's New Year's Eve. It's 1 o'clock in the morning. She's got her little dog in the car with her. She had the windows cranked down a little bit, and it's so bright that she can see out the side window, and partly out of her side mirror, something running through the trees and then meeting the road and running up behind her car on all fours initially. And she's like, is that a horse? Is that a cow? Like, what is that? And she realizes as it's getting closer, like it's got a bit of a sloping back. And she's like, that's not a horse. That's not a cow. This thing, she's traveling at about 90 kilometers an hour. She wasn't going the full speed limit of 100. It's dark. There's kangaroos around. But she's going fast, and this thing was gaining on her, and her dog then started getting really panic-stricken, and she's like, what the hell is that? And it reaches the passenger window, and she sees a being with a face, a humanoid face, hairy all over, looking at her in the window. And then all of a sudden, this being stands up on two legs, keeps running the same speed. And, of course, the dog's losing its mind. She's losing her mind. She almost crashes. And this being suddenly leaps from the side of her car over the car and then runs off into the forest on the other side. She said the car was full of a very bad smell, a stench that was like rotten dead meat, eggs, like really, really nasty sulfur.
Yeah.
And this is something that a lot of witnesses of these beings report is that really awful smell. So that's one of the scariest ones for me, because I imagine myself. I do a lot of driving. I live in the country. I can imagine driving down a country road by myself in the car with my dog. My dog is going bananas. There's a monster. What she's thinking is a monster. I don't think they are now. That's just a point that I'll put in.
Yeah.
But she sees what she thinks is a monster running alongside of her car, and then it's fast enough to then jump over her car and run off. So
90 kilometres is an extraordinary speed.
That's really fast.
I don't think I've heard a story where it's got up to that speed before, but I have heard literally hundreds of stories of these beings running in parallel to cars and actually staring in the window. And it seems really odd, something that's so elusive, that at some point, and it always seems to be that this occurs primarily at nighttime, and when someone's alone in that car, that they've got something chasing. It's not necessarily so that way, but how fascinating. And what?
So had she? Sorry, Jamie. Had she? So did she know anything about these? Has she ever even considered Yowies or Bigfoots or whatever, hairy men? You know, was that part of her worldview or not?
I don't know if it was. This was also going back a few years now, and I can't remember off the top of my head if she knew about them beforehand or not. She certainly knows about them now.
She knows now. Yeah,
And
absolutely.
that running fast. I've just interviewed someone recently who described the being that he saw. He was walking as at night time with his brother, and they were shining their torch around and walking across a field, and the dried grasses were about chest high on them. He's 6 foot tall, so pretty high grass.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, this grey, he thinks was a Yowie, bipedal. The chest high grass on him came up to crotch level on this being. So
wow. That's
very, very tall. He said it was a fine specimen, like really muscular but lean, a little bit leaner than people usually describe Yowies. It's big, muscly, chunky bodies. But he said this being ran faster than he's ever seen anything move in his life. Covered 40 meters in 2 seconds. It was like, and he said it was like it glided, like it didn't move its arms very much, and the movement was so fast and so smooth. The head didn't bob up and down like a human's would.
Right.
It just whooshed off.
Wow.
Yeah, incredible speed. Different anatomy, from what I understand now. Different feet,
obviously.
Different
Yeah.
Isn't it incredible when you think about consistencies? Because that's an odd thing when people say it was a fine specimen, but you hear this over and over again. They actually see the musculature of these creatures, and it stands out to them predominantly that these are like, a UFC fighter or some prized runner, and it's just shocking and astounding to them. Can I just digress back to when you said just prior to that creature jumping over the car, you said it sort of stood up. Was it crawling or was it down on all fours?
It was running on all fours.
It was running on all fours. And this is something that is, and it's something that's reported relatively frequently is seeing them running on all fours. What's also reported not all the time, but often enough to be noteworthy, is they're moving around in a spider-like position. So on all fours, but arms out, legs out, but somehow able. Yeah, and imagine the chest and body strength required to move yourself around that.
Hold that up.
Sometimes they're holding it up on their fingertips. Is that right?
Well, that'd have to be on their toes as well, on their feet. So that's some really strong toes.
And that would be the scariest thing to come across in long grass, not being aware of something, and then all of a sudden it's edging towards you with that sort of body weight and strength, but spider-like in the grass. Wow.
I think scary. even if we were out there and we happened on something like that, even though we're aware, I think coming face to face with something like that, it still flip your mind, flip your world again. You know
absolutely.
What I mean?
I have a bit of
be prepared, but I don't think you actually would be to actually come face to face with something like that.
So have you had a moment like that yourself, Sarah, in terms of going out there on field research for Yowie Hunters or solo?
Yeah, I have actually. I don't need to go anywhere. I believe I've got some company here on the farm.
Right, okay.
I've found. So I think I spoke to you last time about this, but just if not, something that a lot of researchers find is that they find sticks and leaves and rocks placed in patterns that we call a glyph. And I've found one. I've got a little area about 70 metres away from where we live, still on the farm. We've got 300 plus acres. And there's a flat area, and it's a bare area. There's no scrubs, there's no bushes on it. And I left a stick arrangement thinking, I wonder if I've got them here, and I'll leave this out and see what happens. And nothing happened for a few weeks. And then I went back to check one day, and a stick had been woven through my sticks over and under. There's no way it could have blown there. And there's no one else around here. My husband wouldn't play tricks on me like that because I'd kill him. So I can't explain how a stick managed to weave itself through the pattern that I'd already left there. There's also, I also did find, and this is something else that people report, is sticks jammed into the ground, into fairly hard ground, and you think there's no way. It's very hard to replicate how far these sticks that people find are being jammed into the ground and without breaking the stick. It's really hard to do. You've got to have some incredible strength and dexterity to be able to do that. And most human beings can't replicate it. And I found one of those sticks near where we live too. And then another night, my dog, my big shaggy dog, who's not scared of much, was whining and barking and carrying on like he was really quite nervous one night. And I just got this. I got a really strong feeling that there was a Yowie out there. I've also since had confirmed. I've got a little circle of friends who are very gifted psychically, and they're psychic mediums. And I've also had confirmed from them that yes, indeed, there is a lovely Yowie here, and she's female.
Okay.
And she I've been told this by two different people, but that she's here. She doesn't have a male mate. She has a child. She doesn't have a male mate, and
single mother.
She's here. He's passed away somehow, and she stays here on the farm because she feels safe with me, because she knows that there's no way there's any harm going to come to a Yowie on my property. So yeah, I have, but even with all of my experience, all of my knowledge, I still, when I've been out there a few times and I've heard noises, there's still a fear. It's a human. It's just instinct. it's fear of something that is way more of an apex predator than we are.
Right. And you know what? It's so astounding in a way too when you do that research and you start to familiarize yourself with the intricacies and the reports.
Experience.
Sometimes that phenomena starts to appear to you and feel more comfortable. You've actually gone, you've seized up again. How's our floor? Is it flooding?
It's all right. You keep going.
We're not too bad.
No, it's not bad.
Well, a lot of people around the world talk about cohabitation, that they actually exist where they live in an experience with that. And they do. Do you do gifting? Do you do anything like that? Can you hear me, Sarah? She's just gone.
Oh, it's all right.
We're in the midst of our floor being flooded and the weather affecting things. Sarah, if you can hear me, she's popped in again. I'm going to pop her up. Okay, let's try for a different line. I'm loving this. Our floor is actually flooding, and you're going on and off, but it's okay. We're getting through it. So I was just wondering.
If you need to reschedule, we can, Jamie.
I know that, but we should be all right because we've got to deal with it anyway. And the rain it's only when the rain gets torrential, but it's very frustrating because we're overcrowded here. We're hoarders buried alive, Sarah. So we've got lots of significant things still on the floor I need to get up and run with at some stage. But Asper's dealing with it beautifully. It's not a big deal. She's screaming from behind the screen. So I was just curious.
Is she all right?
She is fine. She will deal with anything. I'm the one that goes to water. I'm the one that'll need the doctor. Look, I was going to ask you, do you do any gifting? Because it's not an odd thing for people that find they're in a cohabitation experience to actually start some sort of relationship with some sort of gifting. So is that something you've started to do?
I have. I've tried a few different things. I left out a bucket with a lid on it with apples and bananas and some marbles in there, and that wasn't touched. And I was really disappointed. And a friend of mine, Karen, who was a psychic and can talk to the Yowie people, told me that I was being too obvious and they weren't going to fall for that trick. Because I'm thinking, if it's got a lid on it, anything that can get those apples out of there, it's got to be a Yowie, right? So I'd set it up so that I would know definitely that it wasn't just a possum or something else that took the apples, but that it would be a Yowie. But apparently they weren't impressed with that trick and they weren't going to fall for it. So, but I have left out. So I removed that, and I've left. I did say that she wasn't. My friend Karen told me that the female who's here she wasn't interested in food exchanges right now. So I left out some marbles. I left out 4 marbles, red, green, black, blue, and yellow. The yellow one went missing. So, and I left them inside a tree hollow. There's no sign of the marble anywhere. It would be really hard for anything to get in there to
take it,
like a bird or anything to take it. So I suspect the marble was taken, but I haven't left out too much food wise for those reasons. I've got some crystals out there. I had a bag of like amethyst crystals, and I've left them out there a couple of weeks ago, but they haven't been taken. So maybe she doesn't want those. I don't know.
She's not new age.
Yeah,
she's not new age. Right.
She is extremely lucky to have you here, and she could be fretting. She could be going through so much emotional, loss because of her partner not being there. You just don't know. And people are going to start now that are not aware of all the subtleties of this research. They're going to start thinking psychics, gifting, leaving things out. But this is an incredible segue, because I was going to ask you how you feel about things like Mindspeak. There's 2 distinct camps in doing this research. One wants to keep it flesh and blood, and we're looking at something like Gigantopithecus, so this relic hominid, and others like us that just open our minds and let the research take us where it needs to take us.
Where it's taking us.
We're stepping into the world of that derogatory term, especially stateside, they call the woo. And I think that's just based on people's own insecurity and they're wanting to sustain some sense of credibility. Yeah.
Well,
and not go where that research takes you. And unfortunately, there's two sides to this. And one of those can be that it appears to be incredibly flesh and blood, but it has all these subtleties and other inferences that take it into the world that we term supernatural or paranormal.
Yeah.
And that's an astounding thing for people to be able to cope with. And so how do you perceive things like Mindspeak?
Well, I've experienced it myself many times now. Over the last 12 months, I've connected with multiple different Yowie people. I've also got a group of friends. There's 7 of us, and they're all psychic mediums. One of them's a shaman, a shamanic healer, and we all we get together in a little group and online, and we all of us have had Mindspeak experiences. So what started it though? I didn't, even though I've always been attracted and drawn to this subject and into the paranormal, and I can feel energy. I'd never seen ghosts. I'd never had any psychic experiences really that were noteworthy, but I was having people report to me Yowie experiences that included Mindspeak and multiple. And so once you get, if there's just one report, okay, it might have been someone who was having a psychotic break at that time.
Of course.
But when you have multiple people, different kinds of people, different range of ages, multiple locations, and they're all and multiple of those people are reporting Mindspeak situations, you kind of have to then start, in my opinion, as a researcher, if you were to ignore that side of things just because it makes you feel a bit uncomfortable and you haven't experienced it yourself, for me, I didn't believe that was being a good researcher. No. I have to go where the evidence is taking me, as you said, Asper, before. And it has taken me down that path. And then going down that path and talking about it on my show a little bit, I've since had so many people reach out to me saying, oh my God, I'm so glad you're talking about this because this happens to me too.
Right.
All over all over Australia, also in Canada. I've interviewed someone in Canada who experienced that, the United States. It's so what we can extrapolate from those reports and from my own experience is that we're dealing with a being who is highly intelligent, who has the ability to communicate telepathically to humans, and it absolutely happens, and I can vouch for it. I've had, if you want to hear about some of my own.
Yes, I was going to ask you how does this Mindspeak work with you, and what did you, and how do you, I mean, do they, is it a feeling you get, or is it in words? But if it's in words, do they speak English? All that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, all the questions that I had too. So some people experience it as a knowing. Suddenly you suddenly know something and you're sure of it. Some people experience it in their own mind voice. When you talk to yourself in your mind, that sort of voice, but they're not your thoughts. It's the voice in your head, but it's not, you're not consciously thinking of these particular things. Or sometimes people actually hear other voices, like big, deep voices that aren't their own. It can come in flashes, like in images. It can come in smells. It can come in colors. But for me personally, it's usually image flashes and my mind's voice telling me stuff that I haven't thought about or hadn't known before. but that's coming into my head. It started out, someone contacted me, my friend who's Daryl, who's a shaman, a shamanic healer. He's Australian but lives in Sweden. And he sent me an email saying, I'm not really 100% sure why I'm reaching out to you, but I feel compelled to. So we had a session, and he told me he'd seen a Yowie 20 years before that, and he told me about that. And then
here in Australia?
Yes, here in Australia, when he was when he was in his 20s, he saw a Yowie. Right. So he told me about that experience, and he found very soon after our first chat, in his work as a shaman. Now, a shaman works on the astral plane, and they work with spirits.
Mm-hmm.
He found when he was working with people that he had Yowie. And he sees very clearly. I'm not as gifted as him. He sees in 3D color movie pictures, and he had Yowies coming to him and talking to him. And he had a Yowie come to him, a big 12-foot dark brown male Yowie come to him and say, I need to talk to Sarah, and I want you to be the intermediary because she won't understand initially. And so he let me know that, and I was like, oh my God, really? Oh, that's so exciting. How do I do that? And then we had a session where see if I can explain it to you. We meet at the Tree of the World. Now, the Tree of the World is this space in your mind. You visualize it. Mm-hmm. And it's this intermediary space between the lower levels and the upper levels of the astral planes. And so you meet there in your mind. And then suddenly I'm meeting Daryl there, and suddenly this big Yowie is there. And Daryl said to me, he wants to show you something. So all of a sudden in my mind come these pictures, and I'm running through. In fact, I wasn't running. He picked me up and ran with me through the forest. And it was like he was showing me his home. And it was this rainforest similar to the Springbrook National Park up in Queensland, where I've been a few times and where the AYR team researches. And so we're running through this forest, and we sit down on a hill, and we overlooking the forest, and all flashes of different images. And then all of a sudden I can see a campfire. And then all of a sudden I recognize the place. And the place is base camp for the AYR research spot, where they saw where they got the thermal footage of the Yowies a couple of years ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
the 9-foot tall Yowies a couple of years ago, same spot. And so I recognized that spot because I've been there with them a couple of times. And then I recognized I could see all of us, me included, but it was like I was looking at all of us from deep in the forest. So he was giving me
his bird's eye view.
His bird's eye view of when we were there, of us. He's looking at us.
Mm-hmm.
And I've since had someone else who talks to them say, he was dying to prank you. They were all dying to prank you at that stage because to scare the crap out of you, but they didn't. I'm like, I'm glad. I'm glad of that. So that first episode has started 12 months worth of contact with my friend. I've nicknamed him Donnie Doolagal. So Doolagal is an original Australian word for Yowie. He does have a name, and I'm not going to mention it publicly because I asked him for permission, and he would rather I not use his name. I think it's to do with if you call someone's name energetically, you can connect with them, and he didn't want the whole world connecting with him. So
sure.
I've nicknamed him Donnie. So Donnie has an incredibly loving vibe. I don't feel fear whatsoever. All I feel is I get head tingles. I feel a sensation of euphoria. My face tingles, my head tingles, my hands tingle. My throat chokes up like I'm going to cry. And my eyes start watering. It's like I all of a sudden feel really, really emotional. And you can't fake that.
No.
It just all of a sudden, and when that happens, I know he's near. I know he's trying to connect with me.
Right. So do you know why he wants to connect with you? Why he's connecting with you?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's why they're connecting with people all over the country at the moment.
Right.
And not only in Australia, but the Sasquatch people are doing the same in Canada and in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
So the planet's in a bit of a mess. I'm sure we could all agree that
We all know that, yeah.
And human beings have made a big mess of things. We're in such dire straits that we're on the cusp of perhaps losing our civilization, a bit like what happened to Atlantis, which was destroyed in a big flood, the biblical flood that's mentioned. And we are in grave danger at the moment of being annihilated completely, and and also destroying the planet. The planet's also in a vibrational shift. The frequency and electromagnetic vibration of the planet is rising as well. So their purpose at the moment is to reach out to us, to help us raise our vibration, to help us go with the planet, to make it a bit easier, to wake us up and to help us.
See, they're not connecting with the right people.
Well, with Sarah they are.
No, but Sarah can't do anything about it.
They
need to, do you know what I mean? It's like
no, exactly.
We're already we're aware. We
the
already know this. We know this. You know, the multitudes. There's I'd say millions of people that are grassroots living a life trying to get along. You know, being good people. But we're not the ones running this planet. The planet is being run by horrible, narcissistic, greedy, you know, I don't want to say evil, but negative people for their own benefit. And they're the people they need to scare the shit out of to make them realise what's going on.
But that's not really their vibe, and that doesn't actually – it wouldn't fix anything either.
They need to go to Bohemian Grove in June or July when all those you know moguls go and scare the living crap out of them. That's what they need to make that stone owl Moloch come to life and just burn all those people to a cinder.
I told you to be restrained today.
Sorry.
I told you restrained.
You know I can't.
This is an incredible story. You know, if I can just again take you back to when you first go into that state, is this like a meditative state? Is this like a hypnagogic state? It is.
It is.
And so you do some pre-work before that and slip into this other level of consciousness. Am I correct there?
Yeah, it can be. So part of meditating gets you into a place where you can easily connect with them for sure. But sometimes I don't even need that. Sometimes I just say his name a few times or just start talking aloud to him or talking about him with someone. He's probably listening to me right now.
This would be a sacred space. If we to actually go back, and you've spent much more time than we have dealing with the indigenous of this country, this would be closer to their way of perceiving these beings than us looking at it as a relic hominid in a materialistic three-dimensional reality. Am I right in that assumption?
Yeah, you
absolutely. Our original Australians know way more about our hairy friends and their true nature than we do, for sure.
Well, so did the native, you know, the
Native American Indians. Yeah. But I also think
and
that
the Inuit people
really,
in Canada, and
that salient point about not being able to say the name means you've already crossed over that barrier, and you're acknowledging that this is actually a sacred truth, and we need to respect that truth and not abuse it and not exploit it for our petty moments in media, trying to sort of put ourselves up on a pedestal that's ultimately going to crash down anyway. And I think it's a really profound moment that you have come to in your life that's quite astounding. How does the husband cope with this?
Well, he loves it. He's actually quite quite gifted psychically himself. So even though he's not, and it runs in his family, so even though he's not, he doesn't do the work that I do, he's really in touch with this, and it doesn't bother him. It doesn't bother him at all.
That's such a beautiful thing to hear, because the greatest thing you can have is that symbiotic relationship in love.
Yeah,
I mean, I think that's our greatest achievement, and to have that astounding support there, and
to be able to do what you need to do without.
And I don't think that people take into consideration, that these words have become in many ways like a polemic. They've been weaponized against us. But this word psychic, I mean, everyone is able in themselves to cope with the word intuition. Well, let's try and define what that means. What does your intuition mean? Your intuition means that you're psychically aware of the environment around you, and that you know something more than what you've learned in that materialistic, reductionistic way.
Well, there's more to than what you can hear, see, smell, touch. There's other as well.
But I think Sarah's just fallen back on something that's been intuitively there from the beginning. And that was her driver to be fascinated about this subject matter. But now it's really coming home to roost, which is quite astounding. And I think it's courageous to actually share those stories and get those stories out there.
Well, I was feeling very vulnerable, to be honest, to start with. I didn't talk about this on my show at all to start with. I have now a little bit more. I haven't told everyone all my experiences by any means, because
you don't have to.
Well, as soon as I started talking about it, I started getting social media comments going, "Oh, way to lose all credibility. If you're a real researcher, you can't believe in that rubbish." And
it's not a belief, is it? It's a knowing.
Plus, also, you're aware as we are that the moment you actually step into that world, it's like popping your head above water and becoming a target.
Yeah.
Everyone starts shooting at you. So we're not stupid and naive enough to think. So I think it takes a huge amount of courage to articulate these things. And the truth in it is exactly what you said before, that you all of a sudden, you might get all that negativity, but you get other people going, thank heavens you've stated that, because that's exactly what happened to me, and I've needed to get it out.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, I needed to know that it was happening to someone else,
Yeah. And I've had so many people reach out to me and say exactly that, and that say that they're having the same experiences, and thank you for talking about it, because it makes them feel not so alone. I actually was I was given a gift. I was talking to my Yowie friends, and I was explaining how I was actually feeling quite vulnerable, and excuse me, I'm getting a bit sweaty. I was feeling quite vulnerable talking about this stuff, and I went out of the farm gates one morning and found a dead kangaroo without its head and without its arms. It just the bottom half of the kangaroo.
Right.
And I thought, that's really odd. Like, how does a kangaroo get there with no head? Like, where's the head? What animal could possibly rip off the head of a kangaroo and the arms and take it with them, but then leave the rest? And it had left, the heart was still there, and it hadn't nothing had eaten all of the organs. And I took photos of it and sent it to one of my psychic friends who talks to Yowies quite regularly, and he said, "Oh, Sarah, that's a gift." He said, "Sit quietly for a minute and see what comes into your mind, and maybe say thank you." So I did that, and I said thank you to whoever's left this gift, and I got this image of a massive Yowie twisting the head off this kangaroo. That was the first flash that came into my head. And then I reached out in my mind. I pictured my hand reaching out saying thank you, to shake hands almost. And I saw this image of these two giant hands kind of reaching out like that. And they gently grasped mine. This is in my mind, but it was so clear, it was so vivid, of these two big hands that just came out, and I said thank you, and I got this massive rush of energy and a thank you back to me. It was physical, I could feel it, but I got the words thank you back into my head. So They know that I've taken a bit of a risk speaking about this, and I've had lots of other people reach out to me and say, "Oh, the Yowies up here are really happy with you. They love the way you're talking about them. You're talking about them as they really are, not as they're not monsters, and they're so delighted that you're talking about them truthfully, like the good, the loving beings that they are."
Right.
Another little anecdote. I was talking to, I was sitting with my husband, and I was telling him about some of the criticism I was getting, and one of the comments was, "Oh, they're not all. Some of them are really bad. They're not all loving. I mean, before you get your flute out and get all hippie and start playing a flute for them and putting flowers in their hair, like they're not big teddy bears." And so I was telling my husband that, and I said, "Well, for all I know, in fact, I'm pretty sure my Yowie, Donnie, would love it if I played the flute for him. In fact, he probably wouldn't mind if I put flowers in his hair." And I got this image of him. He was laughing his head off, and he said, "Steady on. I don't want flowers in my hair." And then my husband turns around to me and says, "I reckon he'd say, 'Steady on. I don't want flowers in my hair.'" And I was like, "Oh my God, that's exactly what he just said."
There we go.
And so then, then I got this image of, because he has a wife, he has a woman, and she's a much darker color. She's a black, and her face popped into my mind. She was laughing as well, and I said, "Well, maybe you should put the flowers in his hair. Maybe he won't let me do it." And she shook her head, and she looked down, and their child, they've got a male child. I call him Junior, and Junior looks up at me, and I said, "Oh," and she looked down at Junior as if to say, he's the only one who'd get away with putting flowers in his hair.
Right.
And I couldn't believe it, though. I'm sharing a joke with a Yowie. Like, I was so astonished and so delighted and so heartwarmed, but so amazed and astonished that I was sharing a joke with a Yowie. It sounds ridiculous and it sounds crazy. I know that. I know how it sounds. But that really happened. They have a sense of humor. He's really playful, really gentle, really playful, really funny. It's great.
I mean, it doesn't sound ridiculous to me. It sounds like you really need to experience this yourself before you realize that you've hit this incredible level. Well, what you're saying there to me sounds like literally thousands of shamanic experiences people have had throughout history, and you're having extremely shamanic moments there, which are extraordinary. I mean, shamanic moments are not prejudiced. They cross over all socio-economic boundaries, color, race, and, it's quite amazing who can have them and where they're having them. What do you think we're dealing with when it comes to this parallel hominin? Are we dealing with something that's flesh and blood, or something that can transverse that reality?
Both. I think they're both. They're I don't think they're always in our reality. I think they exist alongside of us in a parallel reality. I don't believe they're here all the time.
Otherwise, we would have.
They're certainly not visible to us all the time. And they certainly have an ability to slip between dimensions. I'm not sure if you've heard of Sunbo True Brother. He's a Canadian, and he wrote the Sasquatch Message to Humanity. Now, if you're interested in this side of things, get your hands on his books. He spent several months channeling a Sasquatch elder called Kamu, and Kamu wanted to convey to Sunbo and for him to give this message. So that's why he published it, and people have read it all over the world now. They were the original hominins of this planet. Human beings are made using some of their DNA and some other kind of DNA from it.
You know what? You just sent a chill through me. That's what we've always thought. And we thought they were the original evolution.
Yeah.
They are the keepers of nature.
Yeah.
And we're some odd mix-up there that someone's fiddled around with.
Destroyers.
Well, we're like rats. We're like a plague. And I wonder if rats are better than what we are.
We're like cancer on this planet. Look what we
Go on. Sorry to interrupt you. But that just went straight through me like a knife. Then.
Yeah. Yeah. So they've always been here. They've been here longer than us. They're very sad at what's happened to the planet and what human beings have done. But the message from Camus was that don't blame yourselves entirely. There are other forces at work. There are other alien races at work who have constructed a matrix and a system around humanity that has led us to indulge our darker side. And that's the world around us, the society around us is the result of something very powerful forces pushing us in that direction. I don't think
sinister forces.
Yes, very sinister forces. But not all of us are like that, as you know. And so we've been behind the 8 ball, and it's been very difficult for us to be our true natures and to create a society that's loving and where everyone thrives and where you don't have the horrors that are happening in our society right now. So I actually have hope. They're here to help us, was the message. They're here to help us sort this shit out because we're in big trouble. But they're here to help us.
What's your thought?
Look, you know what my thought is. It's like there's more of us good people on this planet than there are of these horrible people that are running this world for their own power, for their own greed, for their own whatever. And if we only banded together, we could kick them out of power. I don't know why we don't. Because, I kind of do, because what they do is they dangle in front of us, that lifestyle and those trinkets of that lifestyle. And a lot of people are aspirational. They want to be like them. They want to walk around with, $40,000 Birkin bags to carry your crap in. You know what I mean? Yeah. You don't need it. They want to all drive Ferraris and they all want to wear, the most expensive clothes and stuff. And so they're all aspiring towards that instead of trying to aspire to being kinder and more loving to each other and live a simpler life. We don't need all this stuff that they're selling to us. I mean, look what we're doing to the planet because of, the amount of clothing,
the amount of crap
that people buy all the time and wear it once. I seriously, I see it every single day, in recycling bins, brand new clothes with the tags on and the receipt in the bag straight into the recycling bin. They haven't even worn it, and they put it in the recycling bin to go to landfill. They don't even give it to an op shop or a Goodwill shop to pass it on to someone else. Even op shops now are run by corporation. They're a corporation now. They're not a Goodwill. The prices, they've got so much clothing that they're trying to get rid of. Yeah. Instead of putting a 50-cent price tag on it to move it out the door and give it for affordable to people to buy, they're selling it for, heaps and heaps of dollars that is not really that cheap. You can buy cheaper clothes brand new in Kmart than you can in an op shop, which, that just makes no sense to me. So that's. I mean, what I say, give me the button, I'll press it, and we're all gone. We can leave this planet alone. Seriously. That's been my mantra for a long time.
But you know what, Sarah, even if people find this really hard to cope with, and they think we're actually tilting at windmills, and we're being, people obsessed with a non-reality, they should look at it from a metaphorical perspective. And metaphorically, this is exactly how we need to be. We need to have much more respect for each other. We've been sold this false commodity of the individual as the most powerful
or the most important person.
But we're nothing without each other.
There's 8 billion of us. You're not that special. Nobody is that special. Like, seriously.
And so I think what you're doing is actually probably one of the greatest natural evolutions of the research. And it's a really courageous place to be able to articulate that to the world, because the world's not very kind. when it can't understand something it can't cope with.
Yeah.
But you and I and Sarah know that the more positive you are in your intentions, the most profound, beautiful experiences come back to you.
Yeah.
And why should that be?
Because that's the way the world works.
Absolutely.
It is.
Absolutely.
If you put something positive out there, positive stuff's going to come back to you. If you put negative stuff out there,
yeah. You know what, too? The other thing is, I mean, why shouldn't these invisible worlds that we get glimpses of in our three-dimensional reality, why shouldn't they be as complicated as the world we live in ourselves? I mean, we know very little of the life that exists underneath the sea.
Yeah, totally.
We're still discovering species every day, the complexity of the planet and the way that it is. Why can't these other worlds and other dimensions and things that elude our ability to scientifically understand them at this point be just as complex?
Yeah.
Or even more complex.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it is. It is out there, whether everyone believes in it or not. I think it's interesting what you said earlier on about the people who dismiss the paranormal side of things. I honestly feel that most of those people, and they get really aggro about it.
Oh,
like I'm not aggro about anyone who, if you don't believe in that side of things,
that's
okay,
fine. That's fine.
Whatever. But whatever floats your boat. But people get really angry and quite aggressive about or towards people who do believe in this stuff and have experienced this stuff. And I think it has a lot to do with not being in touch, not being connected to spirit, and not being in touch with that side of things. Everyone is psychic. Everyone has intuition. Everyone can connect to this invisible world and see this invisible world. I think some people, though, are afraid, and I think that's where the aggression comes from is fear. But also just the general state of things where we, particularly on social media, like I run a Facebook group for Yowie Central, and I really don't love doing it. I do it because my listeners like having the Facebook group there, and it helps to get the word out. But I cop a lot of aggression from people, particularly men, and I get nasty private messages because I'm really strict on being nice to people in the Facebook group. If you disagree with someone, cool. If you call someone names and get aggressive, not cool. And that's not going to happen.
There's no reason to throw shade on a different perspective of looking at things.
Here's the thing. There's a lot of stuff out there that I don't believe in, and I don't subscribe to. I never visit their sites or their Facebook things and get involved and start calling people out for believing it. It's like, if you don't believe, that's fine. That's not a problem. Nobody says you have to believe everything, but you don't need to go there and throw shade and call people out that do believe in that stuff.
And
what is
the problem
that?
Is, as a researcher and as an introvert myself, I know, and even I've even felt anxious about sharing my experiences in my own group because I'm afraid of getting attacked by people. And so if I feel afraid, how many other people are out there who've had these experiences who won't come forward if there's a chance that certain other characters are going to attack them and have a go at them? They're not going to do it. So as a researcher, for me, it's totally counterproductive to allow name calling and people getting really aggro with each other. It's really counterproductive, really disrespectful, because then it just shuts people down. Then you end up in an echo chamber with only the very toughest and bravest.
But do you think that those people are doing that? They must be doing it for a reason. They wouldn't be doing it just because they don't believe in that. There's got to be some other reason why they are.
What are you insinuating?
I'm not insinuating anything. I'm just, like I said to you, I'm not interested in that stuff, right? Whatever if I'm not interested in something, I'm not going to go and visit their sites and start calling people out and, threatening people and calling them names, right? Why do these people do that? It's like, if you don't believe that, why are you going there? Why are you trying to intimidate and shut some kind of, research or people talking about something? Why are you trying to shut it down? What's it to you to call yourself like, I'm going to be the mediator, I'm going to go and shut this down because they shouldn't be talking about stuff like that? What is
one of the main things that gets repeated?
I know what it is.
I get really tired of it. Is you people who believe in the woo-woo side of things, are giving all of us a bad name. Like, we're trying to get mainstream society to believe in Bigfoot, and
here's the
you're talking about all of that stuff, that crazy stuff.
Yeah,
makes us all look bad and makes us all look crazy.
So,
and I'm like,
you people,
why do you care about what other people think? Who cares about what some random person in mainstream society thinks of you? I mean,
you people that have been
so insecure that you want to shut everyone else down just because somebody might think you're crazy.
Yeah, well, okay, fine, sure, I can see that. But what you're doing and what you've been doing, what most of the people that have been doing up until now, all these years, let's say from the Patterson Gimlin footage, hasn't gotten us any closer.
No,
right?
Closer. It's never going to be.
So obviously, your research and the way you're going about it is lacking big time. Big time lacking, because we are no closer now after 60 odd years than we were back then. So,
and we're never going to be, because there are way too many anomalous details about Yowie behavior and their abilities and what they can do. There's too much of that. It's never going to be. I think people need to just suck it up and understand that mainstream society is never going to believe in that. And that's not why I do this research anyway. It's not. I'm not out to prove anything to anyone. It's not out to prove the existence of these beings. I know they're there.
But how many? Here's the thing too. What's mainstream society? Every person that's come to you probably thinks of themselves as a person that lives in mainstream society, that didn't believe in this until they were driving home one night and this thing was, galloping next to their car on all fours and looking in their window at 90k an hour. That is a mainstream person, right? Yeah. They don't believe, but now that person believes in it because they saw it with their own eyes. That guy that was running, in the bush, that scientist person now believes in it, but can they go anywhere and talk about it? There is a concerted effort by others, not mainstream society, because all those people that have had sightings, and there are hundreds of thousands all over the world, millions, I'd say, they are mainstream society. They've experienced it. Why is it not part of mainstream society? Because there's something else trying to keep this out of being scientifically, investigated or brought to the fore, because it's something we still don't understand, that science hasn't got a handle on it yet. And so if they haven't got a handle on it, they're going to say to you, it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
I'm done. Yeah. I'm dropping the mic.
Her greatness, it's taken, 58 episodes to actually really let that come out. And you know what?
Ooh, I haven't come out yet.
Sarah, she cops it all the time.
I don't
People
care.
say to me, I'm scared of your wife.
You know what I say to people? If you behave yourself, there's nothing to be afraid of. Obviously, you're doing the wrong thing. That's why you're scared of me.
Yeah. But it's something, isn't that thing also, what breaks my heart is that really sensitive, beautiful people are in tune with this ability, no matter what we want to label it. And they've got the quality that is the utmost greatest quality that human beings can have. And then they are kicked in the ground. It's seen as weakness.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's not weak. It's an astounding strength to have that sensitivity and love for others.
And caring
and be
for other people.
open-minded.
Yeah, absolutely.
And yet they get smashed in the face for it. It saddens me deeply.
Which is why one of the reasons also why I take such a hard line in the Facebook group.
Absolutely.
With
should.
Bad behavior.
Yeah.
And there are people who don't like being called out on their bad behavior, but then there are other people. I've been really heartened by some people who've gotten a bit upset with me because I've said, mate, you can't say that. You can't call someone names like that. And I actually have gone to quite some trouble, this is my free time, trying to explain to certain people why I'm taking the stance that I am. It's not going to be the same cesspit that it is out there on the internet. My Facebook group is not going to be like that.
No.
And I'm going to be strict with it. And for these reasons, for all the reasons we've just spoken about, some people have actually taken that on board. And I've noticed them then responding to people in a much more respectful way. And so I think it is worth, sometimes I throw my hands up and go, oh, this is just, it's a waste of time. Sometimes people don't realize quite how aggressive they're coming across either. And I think everyone should have the chance to learn and reflect on what they're doing and maybe change things and do it better. We're all human.
We need to require more of people, and we don't sometimes. That's the problem. And usually it's hard, because you're getting, you say you're taking a hard line, and people go, oh, why are you taking a hard line? So then you've got to explain it. And it's like, but if you don't, once those barriers are down and people start calling names and then they start threats and they say, and you just go down a slippery slope and it just becomes a free for all. And you've got to say to it, this is what I expect. If you want to be part of this group, these are the expectations. This is what I require from you. If you want to be part of it, that's fantastic. Here are the rules. If you don't like these rules, go and start your own group and you can do whatever you want there, but not here. And I'm about requiring more from people all the time.
I like that. I might have to use that. I'm going to require more from them.
Absolutely. And when you do require more from them, they will give it to you, because people will only give you. People will treat you the way you let them treat you.
Yep.
Right? So if you let them, just abuse you, they will, because you're letting them. If you don't, they won't. And if they do, then you just get onto them and out they go.
That's right. That's right.
That's my
And
philosophy.
I'm just sitting here silently in fear.
You know what to do.
Oh, I do. Believe me. Sarah, I'm sorry we've digressed during this episode.
Yeah, but it's all part of it.
But I'm also really proud that we have, because you know what? Niggling at the back of my mind through doing all this research, and you get those moments when you go out there publicly with a cast like this, you can have 10 extremely inspiring, glowing comments, and then one negative one just sits in you and burns in you and brings you down.
Not me.
And
I ignore that person. That person ain't paying my rent. See you later, mate. Bye.
I wish I was able to brush it off that easily. Things do sit with me for a little bit and I do get a bit wounded. I can brush it off after a while, but things do wound me. Which is why I get so frustrated with people, because I know there are other sensitive souls out there like me. I'm a sensitive soul. So I'm not on my watch. I'm not having people treat people like that in my group. Forget about it.
Yep.
And you've already proved too that people can do better when they're addressed. And you don't address them to put you down. You just go, these are the guidelines. We need to respect each other. And everyone's got their own particular perceptive reality tunnel. All the way that we view the world is from who we are. It's hard burned into our DNA and our perception and our life and our experience, our loving, our background,
and the way our brain is wired too.
Yeah,
that's a big part of it.
And so the more open we are, and I don't, we are more than aware that there is a lot of noise attached to this signal, and a lot of that noise is exploitation. It's media wanting to profit off it.
Mm-hmm.
It's people wanting to stand above everyone else and show that they've got some sense of scientific credulity. But
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day, we've all had a glimpse of something that's beyond what we've been told can be real.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not a question of belief anymore. It's a question of knowing. And I think that's where you are incredibly astounding. And we cannot thank you more for your valuable time today.
Can I just ask Sarah quickly? Dogman, do we have any Dogman stuff going on here in Australia?
We do, yeah, we do. I a couple of years back, a guy named John Kershaw, who has his own YouTube channel now called Creepers, Cryptid and Paranormal Corner.
Right.
He got some photos. He was being stalked and bluff charged in the bush. He had been kayaking. This is just west of Sydney somewhere.
Right.
And he was kayaking, doing a bit of fishing, and he could hear something. I think he made his way he was close to the bank of the river or the creek, wherever he was. He hasn't publicly given that exact location. And he started feeling really frightened, like really scared, and heard something rushing him and stalking him through the bush. And so he decides, all right, I'm getting out of here. It's too scary. But with his GoPro, he snaps a couple of pics off over his shoulder as he's leaving, if he's kayaking away. And he managed to get three shots a second apart of a being that's hiding behind a bush. He's been back there since and worked out, and it had to have been about 9 foot tall. Black head. You can really clearly see long nose,
snout,
ears, snout,
ears.
like Anubis, looked like Anubis.
Wow. Okay. There you go. And well, that had to have come from somewhere originally, didn't it?
Yeah. And I'll just look at my notes here because I got one the other day, but I haven't reviewed this one. But this was one from Western Australia. Oh no, sorry, South Australia, near Adelaide, and it was 2016. A woman's driving with her sister and mother in a car. It was nighttime, and this young woman saw red eyes outside of the car, and the mum saw the red eyes too. This young woman then saw a being rushing towards them out of the dark, and red eyes, a wolf-shaped head, big round eyes, longish hair on the neck. It was kind of big on top and small, so it was really big, top heavy creature, but with a smaller body. But the head was like a big black wolf with red eyes.
Wow.
So if that's not Dogman, I don't know what is. She didn't see it running on two legs, and they drove off. Though at first, because the other sister who was driving the car was getting a driving lesson, and she stalled the car. And suddenly the sister could see this thing coming towards them, and she's going, oh my God, drive. And this poor woman couldn't get the car started. And they were all screaming and getting hysterical because the bloody car wouldn't start. She finally got it started and managed to drive off. But, that was one of the latest Dogman related ones.
Because there's been someone who, when we're doing our screenings at a pub, has come up to me and said he's got someone he knows who's had some Dogman reports and stuff. He's seen a Dogman. And I was like, okay. Wow. So he said you should get him on your show. And I thought,
yes.
Okay.
Well, I don't know if it's about getting on that show, but getting that report down first.
Yeah, but
I worry about people that could be suffering post-traumatic stress too.
Yeah, but if the person, you talk to them beforehand before you got him on, and if he seemed like he really wanted to talk about it and he was okay with it, then sure. For sure. If you can detect post-traumatic, stress, then you kind of go, well, maybe you need to go and get some sort of, help, mental health help first before you come out and, talk about it publicly.
What do you think Dogman is? Sarah? Have you got any assumptions on that? Or are we dealing with something similar to the Yowie?
No.
Bigfoot? Or?
No, it seems I haven't heard one positive Dogman story yet.
No, and
you know what I mean? People
I don't know exactly what you mean.
fear.
Yeah. I haven't researched them, and I haven't listened to enough reports to know, and I haven't connected with them on the astral either yet. But I am curious, so I'm going to do some digging, because it is something that's been popping up lately, and I thought I really want to. I might even, this little group of friends that I've got that are all psychics. We get together every 2 weeks, and we have a little gathering online. So I might
throw it in there.
I'm going to throw it in there. We've got our next session this what day is it? This Friday, anyway, 2 days time.
Oh,
so
okay.
I'll ask. We usually get some Yowies coming in to chat with us as well. So I'm going to ask and see if I can find out a little bit more about the Dogman, and I'll get back to you.
Good. Oh, that'd be great.
The amazing thing is you've actually done something similar to what astrophysicists were doing initially with the UFO experience. You've created this sort of secret college of people that can get together and not be contaminated by the outside world and relax, that have liberated themselves, that have reached another point of incredible enlightenment. I think it's profound. I think it's incredibly courageous. And we're actually trying to do that now with therapists and doctors and other researchers as well, somewhere that's safe. We can go and kick around these ideas
without being, without people going, oh, that's ridiculous. What are you even, looking into that for? But,
wonderful.
Here's the thing. If you're a researcher and, you get so far with a case, and then all of a sudden, what they call this paranormal aspect comes in, that, things were, going in and out of dimensions, or really weird things that don't fit in our physics or science the way we know it. When they come up against that, they shut it down. They go, okay, I don't want to know about that stuff. I just want to know, up to here. Great. It all fits with everything else, but the rest of it, we're just going to discount. And I think that's by discounting that's why we're not getting any further along in the research. That's why we've stalled. We're stalled, people.
Exactly. So I'm doing my best to unstall this situation, and I don't care who wants to laugh at me or kill me.
Yeah.
I think you've always been uninstalling it. I want to say, just before we close, I get a feeling that the female of the species is far more aware of this world than the male will ever be. And I've seen that consistently with Bigfoot and Sasquatch Yowie reports, that there seems to be a lot more experience that occur, because the intentions of the bearer of life on this planet can be far more maternal and caring than what males do with that testosterone. Do you think there's something to that argument?
Maybe.
I was actually just thinking while you were speaking then, trying to go through the Mindspeak cases that I've received. One of those is male. One of those is male by someone who would never admit publicly that that he had a Mindspeak situation.
Right.
The other experiences have been female.
Yeah, right. There you go.
Think of all the other ones I can think of, except for there are 2 men in my little group. There's 5 women, 2 men. So more women than men. Though.
Always,
So you might be onto something there. You might be onto something, Jamie. That it might be, it might be something that women are more, maybe less concerned about how it looks, because I think that's part of the problem is ego gets in the way. And
what are people going to think of me?
Yeah. What are people going to think of me? I can't possibly show something that other people might interpret as being weak or crazy or not mentally stable. And I think possibly, I might be generalizing, but possibly men might be a little bit more concerned about appearing tough, strong, sane.
Yeah.
I don't know. I could be generalizing.
Sure.
Yeah, sure, you're generalizing. From personal experience here, I think most males are probably suffering complete fear underneath and putting out this veneer of complete testosterone when they don't
complete
know.
Control.
Yeah, complete control. Look, we did a podcast, and unfortunately, our researcher was gone a couple of months later. His name was Robbie Graham. He wrote an extraordinary book, 10-year study, silver screen sources into intelligence agencies getting there and affecting popular culture. But we're speaking to him about this salient point, and he actually hit the nail on the head for me. He said that a lot of researchers he'd come across, and he was like basically documents. He'd done an exacting study into that couldn't be questioned, but he was open to the other. And he said that what I've noticed is that most males will try and follow the science. Like if we're at that point with eDNA and we can do later, then they will actually take the way that they experience researching this topic to that level of science. But to go any further, they feel like it's going to destroy their credibility. And they can't go into the world of supposition. And I think that the most important thing is if we are searching, like you said, endlessly today, for some sort of enlightenment here, we actually have to step into other areas of research where Sarah has gone, which are incredibly profound, extraordinarily courageous, Sarah, and in many ways absolutely beautiful, because that's the way both of us perceive your soul to be. And we just wish you all the power in the world and give that husband of yours our love as well. And we can't thank you enough for spending time with us on Down South Anomalies. And we would love to get you back within 6 months, not 12 months this time. It's way too long. God, that year went quickly, though.
Oh, wow. It sure did. It sure did. I would be delighted to come back whenever you want.
To look at Sarah's previous podcast, it was number 9.
Yeah, but we also need them to go to Yowie Central. So tell us how they find your podcast, Sarah.
So you can find my podcast on all the major podcast platforms. So Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, the works, they're all on there. I've also got an online shop now selling Yowie Central merch.
Looks fantastic.
So, really?
T-shirts.
The merch looks beautiful.
You can get wall hangings like I've got here. You can get T-shirts. You can get mugs. You can get mouse pads, all sorts of different things with the Yowie Central logo, but also with I have a very dear friend who has been on the show multiple times, Jazz. She's at my paranormal consultant. She's a psychic medium, and in my little group. She's also a very gifted artist. And so she's come up with, I think we've got at least a dozen amazing illustrations done by her in the online shop as well. So I think the one that you can see just here is one of her designs. But she's got lots of other really cool Yowie and ghost and UFO related designs.
Nice.
So if you're thinking of Christmas presents,
so they can just punch Yowie Central into Google and away you go.
So if you go to Redbubble is the name of the online shop, and if you search in Redbubble, you'll find for Yowie Central, you'll find the shop, and then there's all the different designs in there. So Redbubble.
Okay.
You know, I came across them today and I was a bit apprehensive because I thought, God, is Sarah doing this? This is so groovy. You know, it's so beautiful.
And it's like, yes, she is.
Yes,
there you go.
Yes, I've been very lucky. Jasmine Winter is my friend, and she's a lovely, beautiful person, but also very talented. So, she's got some amazing illustrations there.
Awesome.
You certainly, and I mean, people need to take into consideration that you're not just an ordinary person stepping into this world of woo. You are someone that has spent time as a social worker, that has been out there in the field dealing with heavily traumatized people. And look, my background, I drove mission beat out there for years. I understand that world that you're coming from. And it really means that, you know, there's an incredible heart of incredible merit there. So we appreciate and love you dearly. If you have any trouble on that side, you know what Asper's like right now. Just shoot that email straight here, and we'll get her on the case.
Thank you. And the sentiment is entirely from me as well. You two are beautiful people, and I've loved connecting with you. And I think what you two are doing also in championing this subject is also so valuable, and I really deeply appreciate your time and your kindness to me, and with your efforts on exploring this subject and helping other people learn about this subject. You are doing really important work too.
Well, Sarah, just spending time with you, it's like, you realize how rare it is that when you're around certain individuals, you actually feel uplifted. You feel a better person in their company.
Yeah.
You feel a wiser, more enlightened being. And you're one of those few people we've come across in life that I'm sure always does that for everyone in their wake. So we just wish you the best. Take good care. We're going to get you back really soon. If you are searching for any odd literature, keep us in mind. We have a house where we need to get half the books off the floor. We had a metaphysical library donated to us. So if there's anything you want us to track down, keep in touch in that regard.
Yeah.
And it's been such a valuable, beautiful experience. And I think we've actually covered a very difficult issue in this research. You've flattened people out there now. If they try anything on precise, you're coming for them.
If people just behave and be nice to each other, then there's no need for that.
Oh, exactly.
You know what I mean?
I totally agree.
They don't. Anyway,
I need a bit of an Asper smack.
A metaphysical.
It's the Greek way. No, it's the Greek
smack.
way. No, physical.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
Sometimes some of them need a physical slap, but anyway.
Yeah.
But we don't because you're not allowed.
No.
And that's
Sad.
the problem
We're
with
not
the world.
Anyway. We love you, Sarah. All
right,
power
thank
to
you,
you.
Sarah.
Please go and get some Christmas presents from Sarah and check out Yowie Central. You're an extraordinary researcher and you're big in our heart forever.
Keep doing what you're doing and don't listen to anyone else.
Thank you. Right back at you.
Apart from the husband, occasionally.
Okay.
All right. Take good care. We love you, Sarah.
Thanks,
all the
Sarah.
best. Thank
All
you
right.
so much.
Well, kids, we will be back next week with another show. I don't know where we're going next week. We haven't even thought about it.
As good as this again, is it?
We say this every single week.
Yeah, but we don't have Sarah every single week.
No, we don't.
All
anyway, it's all good. We'll be back next week with another show, and we'll see you then.
Take good care. Bless you all.
Bye.
Bye.